When you picture the Wild West, you probably think of gunslingers, cowboys, sheriffs, and dusty saloons. You imagine tough men on horseback, surviving in a brutal frontier where only the strongest endured. But what if I told you that one of the toughest, most respected figures of the West wasn't a man at all? She was an African-American woman, born into slavery, who would one day outshoot bandits, fight off wolves, haul mail through deadly blizzards, and win the respect of an entire Montana town. Her name was Mary Fields. To her neighbors, she was Stagecoach Mary, and her story is one of the most remarkable and least told in American history. Mary was born around 1832 in Hickman County, Tennessee, into slavery. Very little survives about her childhood, which is itself a reflection of the times. Enslaved children were rarely documented in records, and what we know of Mary's youth is pieced together from fragments. But we do know she grew up in bondage during an era when enslaved people were treated as property. She would have worked in fields or as a domestic laborer, likely from an early age. The Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation eventually brought freedom, but also tremendous uncertainty. For freed African Americans, survival meant moving, adapting, and seizing opportunities wherever they appeared. Many stayed in the South under sharecropping systems. Others, like Mary, looked outward. She was already in her 30s when she gained her freedom, and she decided to carve a new life on her own terms. Some accounts say she worked on steamboats along the Mississippi River after emancipation. The steamboats were tough workplaces, and women were rare, but Mary was never one to be intimidated. By then, she had developed the strength and nonsense presence that would define her entire life. At some point in the 1880s, Mary traveled north and west, eventually arriving in Montana Territory. The frontier was still raw, lawless, and sparsely settled. Railroads were expanding, but remote areas like Montana relied heavily on river routes, wagons, and grit. Mary's destination was St. Peter's Mission, a Catholic institution run by Ursuline nuns and Jesuit priests. It served as both a school and a church for settlers and native communities. Mary likely came west after meeting Mother Amadeus Dunne, the head of the convent, who had once been ill in Ohio and nursed back to health by Mary. When the nun relocated to Montana, Mary followed to help. At St. Peter's, Mary became the convent's powerhouse. She did the heavy work the nuns couldn't, hauling freight, repairing buildings, tending gardens, chopping wood, and guarding the property. She was effectively the foreman, respected for her strength and feared for her temper. Mary was tall, reportedly 6 feet, and weighed over 200 pounds. She smoked cigars, carried a pistol under her apron, and cursed as freely as any cowboy. Her personality was larger than life, and though the nuns admired her, some clergy bristled at her roughness. The turning point came when Mary clashed with a male worker. Accounts differ. Some say it was over wages, others over respect, but what's clear is that the confrontation turned violent. Both drew guns. Shots were fired. No one was killed, but for church officials, it was too much. Mary's presence at the mission had become too volatile. By the late 1880s, Mary was expelled. At nearly 60 years old, she was once again on her own. The timing of her dismissal intersected with a unique opportunity. In 1895, the U.S. Post Office opened bids for what was known as a star route, a private contractor paid to deliver mail along a dangerous 34-mile stretch from Cascade to St. Peter's Mission. The route was brutal. It crossed rugged terrain, fast-flowing rivers, steep hills, and was subject to sudden Montana blizzards. Mail carriers risked freezing, robbery, or worse. Several men applied, but Mary beat them all. The test was simple. Hitch a team of horses to a wagon as fast as possible. Mary did it faster than any of the men. At age 63, she secured the contract, becoming the first African-American woman in the United States and only the second woman ever to hold a star route contract. For the next 8 years, Mary never missed a single delivery. Her nickname, Stagecoach Mary, came from her absolute reliability. In truth, she often drove a smaller buckboard wagon, not a stagecoach, but it didn't matter. To the people of Montana, she was as dependable as any stagecoach line in the nation. When snow blocked the trails, Mary strapped on snowshoes, slung heavy mail sacks across her back, and trekked through miles of frozen wilderness on foot. When wolves circled her, she used her rifle. When her wagon overturned in a storm, she stayed with the cargo for 2 days until help arrived and never lost a single piece of mail. The townspeople of Cascade trusted her completely. Rain or shine, Mary got the job done. Mary didn't just deliver the mail. She delivered character to the entire community. In Cascade, she became a beloved figure. She opened a restaurant for a time. Business wasn't great, not because the food was bad, but because Mary had a habit of feeding the hungry, whether they could pay or not. In a hard land, that generosity was both a blessing and a downfall for her finances. Mary loved children, and they loved her. She always carried candy in her pockets to hand out along her route. Kids followed her around Cascade, enchanted by her strength and good humor. Adults respected her too. She drank whiskey, smoked cigars, and didn't hesitate to throw a punch if provoked. Yet she also had a strong sense of fairness and kindness. Her status in town was so unique that when Montana passed a law banning women from saloons, the mayor of Cascade gave Mary a personal exemption. She was too much a part of the local culture to be restricted. Mary also formed friendships with notable figures. Among them was a boy who would grow up to become a Hollywood icon, actor Gary Cooper. He later remembered her vividly, writing, quote, "Born a slave somewhere in Tennessee, Mary lived to become one of the freest souls ever to draw a breath, or a 38, end quote. Mary eventually retired from mail delivery in her 70s, but she remained a fixture in Cascade. She lived independently, supported by friends and neighbors who admired her. She passed away in 1914 at about 82 years old. Her funeral was one of the largest the town had ever seen. Residents from every walk of life, black and white, rich and poor, young and old, came to pay their respects. She was buried in Cascade, near St. Peter's Mission, the place where her Montana chapter had begun decades earlier. Today, Mary's legend lives on as a symbol of resilience, independence, and the hidden diversity of the American frontier. Her story challenges the myths of the West that focus solely on cowboys, sheriffs, and outlaws. The Wild West wasn't just shaped by men with guns. It was also shaped by women like Mary, a cigar-smoking, pistol-packing, male-howling powerhouse who refused to be defined by the color of her skin or the limitations society placed on her gender. Stagecoach Mary didn't just deliver the mail. She delivered on the very promise of the West, that grit, determination, and courage could forge destiny against impossible odds. Her name may not appear in every history textbook, but her story reminds us of a deeper truth. The legends of the West came in many forms, and Mary Fields, Stagecoach Mary, was one of the greatest of them all. Thanks for staying to the end of the video. Please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Here are some suggested videos you also might like. Thanks for watching.